welcome to another edition of the Verbally Effective Podcast. I am your host, your double E, Ina Esco, and happy holidays. It is December 27th, 2022. We're getting ready for a new year. And you know, Verbally Effective is all about the movers and shakers in the city of Memphis, in the intersections of art, culture, politics, and entertainment. So, let me say this before we get started. I need you guys to hit subscribe on all streaming platforms to the Verbally Effective Podcast. Follow and add that Ina Esco YouTube channel as well. And check it out. Today is very special because I don't usually do part twos with my guests, but this young man has, a wonderful platform, and I wanted him to come and talk to me about his new endeavor. We had him on episode 218. He is the CEO of the Downtown Memphis Commission. He is running for Mayor of Memphis. He didn't tell us that on episode 218, but we got my boy Paul Young in the building with me today.
Yes. Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Good to see you again.
Sorry I didn't give you the announcement at that time. I was still working on it.
When you announced, I was like, I knew it.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel really good. It's been a long 3 months, but
yes.
The reception has been great, and we're really about to start the new year. We're off with a bang. I'm feeling really good about the path forward.
Well, good. A lot has changed since you were sitting in this very seat. I know you recently lost your father, and I just want to give you my condolences. How was Christmas this year?
It was different. It was definitely different. But all of our spirits are up. My dad lived a long life. He was 77. He did a lot for this community, and what I want to make sure I'm doing is carrying out the legacy. Mm-hmm. And that has actually been my inspiration over the last couple of months is, one of the last things he told me was go get it done.
Okay, so
that's what we're going to do. We're going to get it done.
Yeah, I remember you talking about your dad on the last podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was you or someone else had asked me about, my inspirations and who were my role models. And obviously he would be at the top of the list. And so, me and my sister and brother, our goal is to make sure that we honor that legacy.
Yes, indeed.
Keep doing the work.
Indeed. You're going to be carrying this young name.
Yeah, we're going to carry the name. And lift up my mom.
Yes. She needs it.
Yeah, we tried to make sure we showed her love during the holidays, and she's doing well. So good. We're all committed to keeping this work going.
Okay, that's what I want to hear. Now, Paul Young didn't put his name in the hat for Mayor of Memphis. And when you announced, I kind of had the feeling already. I think a little birdie had told me anyway,
sure,
but I wanted you to tell me. I've over the last 3 months, I've seen you out and about. Being Mayor of Memphis is a huge
it's a big deal.
Role. Very intense. We're the city of grit and grind. Memphis, we're a medium-sized market. Our makeup is I guess about 65-70% African Americans. A lot of politics go on, especially in this mayor role. I was like, my boy Paul jumping in.
Yeah. Well, I always say Memphis has never had a mayor like me.
Okay.
And I say that with all due respect to all the previous mayors, but I'm a city planner. And so I literally went to school to figure out how do you build a great city. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Yeah. And so the level of experience I bring is at a level where I believe I'm the best candidate. And I bring what Memphis needs right now. Memphis needs someone who represents the future of our city. Mm-hmm. I always liken it to that J. Cole song, Middle Child. Mm-hmm. In Middle Child, he says, I'm big bro and little bro all at once. So I've learned from my older brothers and sisters. They've poured into me, folks like Archie Willis and the older generation that has held us down for so long. The younger generation, those up-and-coming 20 and 30-somethings, I still connect to them. I still feel their struggle. And so I'm that middle child, and I'm in the position right now where I've built the credibility, I've built up the skills, and now I'm ready to take those skills to lead Memphis.
Definitely. Now, just thinking about our last podcast, you talked about some of the projects that you work on as the CEO of the Downtown Commission. You definitely have the foresight of what is coming down the pipeline, the the companies, the investors involved. And I think that's very important for a role such as this, because we got quite a few people that are running against you, and it's only the end of December.
Yeah, we hadn't even hit 2023 yet. So, there will continue to be people that put their name in the hat. They all want to test it and see how their name resonates, and I get it. I believe that as we get deeper into the process that, some people will change their mind and decide that they're going to serve in a different way. My goal is to make sure that Paul Young is there at the end. So we're out fundraising, we're out building name recognition, and we're going to do the work. What I always say is nobody's going to outwork me. So, it can be all the names in the world, but nobody's going to work harder than Paul Young. And so my goal is to demonstrate, what I bring to the table. I don't come at this as someone who is a lifelong politician. I've never been the politician, but I've always been the doer. I've been the person that has presented policy and enacted policy. And so I've done it on all sides. And so I think Memphis needs a leader that has that understanding, but also has a heart for the people. Like my why is all about purpose and making sure that my life contributes to somebody else's life being better. And so making decisions in that way, and that's my lens, that's the framework that I come from. And I think it's going to resonate with Memphians.
So this race is the first one that's nonpartisan, correct?
Non-incumbent. So we've always had nonpartisan. Well, in recent years, we've always had nonpartisan city elections. This is the first time we don't have an incumbent running in 51 years.
Because of term. Because
of term limits. So term limits, I think they came in 2009 or so. And since that time, we had AC, but he ended up losing in his incumbent election. Strickland won his second term, but he's the first mayor that's ever faced term limits to where he knows that the end of the road is at the end of 2023.
How is your relationship with Strickland?
It's great. I mean, I have a good relationship with Strickland, all of our previous mayors. My goal is to make sure that we maintain relationships across the board. In order to get things done as mayor, you have to lead all the people. That means you got to lead East Memphis, you got to lead South Memphis, you got to be able to work with the state, and you need somebody who has relationships on all sides.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get into it. Let's talk about infrastructure in Memphis, because one would say we kind of behind times. And I know, in your current role, you've been planning and working towards that piece. But very recently, MLGW has had some issues. I think people have a love-hate relationship with MLGW. I don't get any of their services, but I have plenty of friends that power goes out all the time. Anytime we have a huge storm, things of that nature. I saw that they did not renew the 20-year contract with TVA. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so infrastructure is one of those things, particularly utility infrastructure, is one of those things that we think about once or twice a year.
Yeah.
When we have weather events like what we had over the past weekend, and we had it in February, everybody's hot on it and saying, we need to replace this infrastructure. This makes no sense.
They've been saying it.
They've been saying it. And so it feels like we don't talk about it, but we only talk about it periodically, and then it goes away. It falls to the back. What we have to do is make a firm decision that we're going to upgrade the infrastructure and identify a plan to pay for it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. We have to say as a city that this is important enough for us to prioritize it at the top of the list. And I firmly believe that our infrastructure is really key, because if we invest in that infrastructure, we're creating jobs, but we're also making sure that more people are safe and sound. What do I mean by that? I mean, there are people that actually die as a result of the power being out.
True.
And so if we can prevent that as a city, we should.
Yeah, I believe the CEO, Doug McGowan, which recently resigned, correct?
No. Doug just...
Or he just got
got installed as the president.
Who was the person before him?
Oh, JT Young.
JT had just got there.
Now, he had been there, I think, 3 years.
That's not
3
long.
years or so. It wasn't a long time, but he was from out of town, and
Okay.
I think he moved back to Florida to be with the fam.
Yeah.
So
Doug,
I get it.
we got Doug.
Doug is the guy right
we
now.
got Doug.
Yeah.
Well, they've said that they've addressed 22 water main breaks that have been causing low water, causing people to boil water, blah, blah, blah. They fixed about 19. So it has made national news. You know, I mentioned TVA. If we do not renew, I believe we have until 2028. What is our other option? Do we look at other sources of energy, such as renewable sources versus nuclear energy?
Yeah. I mean, I think TVA provides all those different types.
I think they probably...
They
if
have.
we don't go with TVA, is there another option?
There are other options. There are other groups that have submitted proposals. What actually happened is MLGW said they're not going to sign that agreement with TVA. So they didn't rule.
Agreement.
Yeah, they didn't rule TVA out.
They said we're gonna do a rolling 5.
Right. They're going to engage with them in a different way, something that doesn't lock us down for the same level of time.
That's a long time, 20-year contracts.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing in Memphis.
That's what TVA has been doing across their service territory.
So that's what they've offered.
That's what they have offered all of their municipalities that they enter into agreements with. I don't know what the long-term fix will be there. I know there are a lot of discussions taking place with TVA and MLGW. I do believe they'll work something out eventually. But what MLGW said is that this 20-year agreement with a 20-year notice to get out of the agreement doesn't work for us.
Right.
So give us something different. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see what they come back with.
But what would your involvement be in these MLGW talks?
So MLGW is I don't want to say subsidiary of the city, but they're an affiliate entity of the city. The mayor actually appoints the president, and they're approved by city council. All of the budget that MLGW submit is approved by city council. And so we would certainly have a voice in that agreement. We would have a voice, but it would be the board's decision, the MLGW board at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah, because...
And I would make my voice known. I mean, my goal is to make sure that we get clean, that means the renewable energy, clean, low-cost power to our people. Mm-hmm. That's my goal. Whether it's through TVA, some other entity, whoever's providing it, I want to make sure that our people are paying the lowest rate possible and that we are thinking about how are we lowering their bills. Oftentimes we think about how much the power costs, but what about energy efficiency? Mm-hmm. This is something that we don't talk about enough. The reason that many of our families are paying so much in utilities is because they're living in homes that are inefficient. That means that when you turn the air on, it can't blow enough air because the air is going out all the holes and cracks in the windows and in the attics and all these different spaces. And so if we can find ways to fund energy efficiency improvements in our homes, then we're going to be lowering utilities. And our utility provider, our power provider, can be a partner in that, whether that's TVA or whoever else comes to the table.
Okay.
And so as mayor, those are the types of things that I'm going to be thinking about, is what can we do for the people?
Yeah, because baby, they complaining about those high bills.
Yeah, I mean, I feel
$800 bill.
I feel them. I had my own bills that are far higher than I would like them to be. And some of it is just a function of where we are in the world. And so the world is in a tough place, so we get that. But if there are things that we can do locally to ease the burden on families that can't afford to have a $500 jump in their utility bill, then we should be doing it. And
it makes me wonder what another medium-sized city, how are they doing things differently than us?
Yeah, well, another thing that we have to keep in mind here is that we have a lot of other fees that are on our utility bill that we don't think about. Like there's a fire fee, there's a water fee, there's a street light fee. There's all these fees that are municipal fees that MLGW is collecting for the city. And so while it may say that your bill is $400, like $70 goes to the city of Memphis for stuff that's not utilities.
Did not know that.
Yeah, see, those little nuggets.
We're gonna cut that out.
I don't know if we can cut it out. I don't know if we can cut it out, but I think we need to be very clear about that fact that there are some different things that are
That can make
included on
the
your
difference
bill.
of making or breaking someone.
It can, but those are also things that need to be paid for as well. So I don't know if we cut them out, but we can be much more clear about how we identify that those things are included.
Gotcha. Still sticking with infrastructure. I recently did a podcast with Grammy-nominated Marco Pave. He's a Memphis hip-hop artist. You know Marco?
Yeah, I know who he is. I have never met him. I'd love to meet him though.
Okay, so as we were chatting, he's currently doing a residency at Georgetown in D.C.
Nice.
And I asked him, do you miss home? Do you miss Memphis? He was like, I do. But living out in D.C., I can see the differences, like in our transit system. He was like, in D.C., you can get anywhere at any time using anything. You really don't need a car. We don't think about that living in Memphis,
right?
Because that is just not set up here. Is that a part of our future infrastructure?
It has to be. It has to be. Transit
anytime
is
soon?
So important. I mean, it's not a 5-year play. I mean, I think it's more of a 10, 15-year play in terms of improving transit to the level that we need it to be. I'm not sure when we'll actually get to light rail, which is, what they have in D.C. and New York and those northeastern cities. And the reason is because our density is low. And what I mean by that is, if you think about D.C., there are literally thousands of people that live along this intersection and this stop. We don't have that level of density, and so it's not the same number of people that are moving in different directions. And so we have to be smart about how we grow out and expand our transit network. What I believe is that we should be investing in bus rapid transit. Okay. These are these buses where it's an electric bus, and it goes on a fixed route, but they are sleeker, they're cooler, they're faster. There's even technology built into the buses so that as the bus goes to this light, they change on the light. So if the bus is coming, the light's automatically turning green to accommodate this bus. So it's getting people to and from faster. We're actually working on a line. I say we, the collective we. Matter's working on a line that'll go down Union, it'll dogleg over to Poplar, and then it'll turn around at University of Memphis and then come back down towards downtown. And so it'll go through the core of the city, but we need more of those BRT lines all throughout our city. And I think that's going to be the lowest cost way for us to really step up transit in the short term.
Yes, indeed. Let's jump into crime. The city has initiatives that deter criminal activity, like blue light cameras, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. But what programs can you initiate year one that can help with criminal activity, just to keep, our people on track?
Yeah, so with crime, first let me say that I feel the pain that everybody's feeling. Mm-hmm. When I'm driving down the street and almost get mowed down by somebody darting in and out of traffic, it makes me think about my 11-year-old daughter and the fact that in 5 years, she's going to be driving on these streets. Yes. And she's going to have to navigate. She's going to have to stop and get gas somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned about her stopping at the gas station and possibly getting robbed. Mm-hmm. Like, those are real concerns that families are having every day. So I feel that pain. And so what I always tell people is, I think we have to have a dual approach. When it comes to crime, we got to be non-tolerant on violent gun crime. Anybody that's doing it, we got to get them off the streets ASAP. We must. I mean, they got to go. And I hope they go into a criminal justice system that's focused on reform and they can change their lives. But my job as mayor is get you off the streets ASAP. And we're going to do all we can to make that happen. The second side of the approach is we have to invest in our young people in a different way. What we are reaping are seeds that were not sowed. What do I mean by that? If 10 years ago we were investing in the lives of these young people, they might be making different decisions right now. But they're not. And it's not just a Memphis problem. This is a national problem. Mm-hmm. This is a national epidemic. The crime is outrageous everywhere. Outrageous. And so the question is, what are we going to do different? Because if we're just doing the hardcore arrest, lock them up, which I do believe in, we got to do it for those that are committing those crimes. But if we're not redirecting the path of the young people in our community, then all we have is a pipeline. Because once you remove the criminals on this side, then you just created a job opportunity.
Right.
Somebody's going to come fill their role unless they have another opportunity in mind, unless we've shown them something else, unless we've invested in the programs that are making a difference in our community, that have demonstrated results. I participated in a program called My Brother's Keeper with Tim Harris, and we were at Havenview Middle School. It's just a quick story. This was in this past school year, and we started in the fall of 2021. At the end of 2022, at the end of that school year, we had a program, and the teacher stood up and said, Tim, I don't know what you did with these young people, but this is not the same kid that was in my class at the beginning of the year. He had a whole different mentality. He had 20 young men who was deemed to be the baddest kids in the school. One of the young men stood up and said, the reason I'm different is because Tim was consistent. He was there every week. All these other folk, they talk to us, but we don't never see them again. Tim was there every week, and Tim wasn't making a lot of money. Tim was just doing it out of the goodness of his heart. But just imagine if we were investing in a Tim Harris in every school in our community. Imagine the difference that it'll make in the lives of those young people, and the difference it'll make in the crime that we're seeing. Yeah. Because these are young folks that are breaking in windows.
Very young.
I mean, I'm the head of Downtown Memphis Commission. I hear about all of the crime. We're working to implement different things. We're adding a whole overnight shift, which we've never had on our Blue Suede Brigade. These are young people that are breaking in these cars, doing all this property crime. And it's because they're bored and misdirected, and we got to redirect their paths.
Yeah. I like the proactive approach, the story that you just mentioned. Since we've had the last podcast, they were doing the election for district attorney. So now we do have Steve Mulroy.
Steve is in.
What's your assessment on how he's been doing since he's been in?
I mean, it's early, so it's hard to give an assessment, but he seems very proactive. He's thoughtful, and I'm rooting for him. I want him. His success is our success.
True.
And so I'm rooting for him. I want him to do well. Our community needs it. Our community. When you think about what it takes to govern in our community, it's not a one entity thing. Like, the mayor does not directly control Memphis and Shelby County schools, doesn't directly control, the criminal justice system, doesn't control the DA's office, doesn't control the state laws. The mayor has to be able to influence all of those areas. The mayor has to be able to articulate a vision for all of those other areas to follow. That's my goal as mayor, is to make sure that I'm the chief collaborator for our city.
And you sound like you up for the job.
Oh, I'm so focused right now.
You seem laser focused.
I'm really focused right now. I hadn't been this focused on anything in a very, very long time, but I really feel deep in my heart that this is where I need to be. This is where God is calling me. And like I said, I'm just going to do the work.
Yes. Let's talk about race now.
Let's talk about it.
Now, I had read this article on MLK 50. Although Memphis is a racially diverse city, it mentioned that, Memphis is still very segregated. For example, it's nearly impossible to find a white person who lives in Westwood, Klondike, the southern end of Whitehaven, nor is it easy to find a black person who lives in High Point Terrace or Central Gardens. And that's per census data, right? And this leads to different effects.
Right.
When that is, situated in those numbers. How do you plan to address race in Memphis? Because when people hear of Memphis, it's always a stigma aligned.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously race is something that's always top of mind in Memphis, regardless of who you're talking to, what the issue is. You can rest assured race is somewhere in the background. Oftentimes I hear people say we should talk about it more, but I think we talk about it quite a bit. I think we are short on solutions on how to bridge the gap. And I think a lot of times our racial issues play out because we're not having direct communication with each other. And I'm going to butcher this quote, but I was listening to John Hope Bryant speak And he said something at the end of his speech that I thought was so profound. He said, when you're talking about these challenging issues and tough issues, you should speak without being offensive, listen without being defensive, and always leave your opponent with their dignity. And I think sometimes when we come into these conversations, it's so emotional and so fired up that we don't always have our communication in that way because it's so passionate. And I think we need to make sure that we're actually listening to each other. The other thing I'll say, just speaking to those stats that you talked about, in terms of, who lives in what area, a lot of those patterns, they are the same as the patterns were, 50, 60 years ago. So that's not a new thing. I wouldn't say it's just a choice. Now, there were things that were done, redlining, and a lot of things that played into it. But what I will say is that when choices were made available, there are communities that are diverse, like Cordova, which was
is the most diverse.
It's the most diverse. Article. Yeah, it's the most diverse because we've done the same research. It's the most diverse community, and so what you saw from a land use perspective, this is the city planner in me. As new communities grew up outside of the core of the city, what you saw leave was not just white flight in Memphis. What you saw was economic flight. What you saw were anybody with means left. And if you didn't have means or you just had a deep heart for the community, you stayed. And what happened then was as those people with wealth left or money, then the businesses followed. And then you saw the growth of Hickory Hill. You saw the growth of Cordova. You saw the growth of all these areas outside of the city. South Haven was a beneficiary. Olive Branch was a beneficiary. All of those communities are benefiting from, that flight that was happening from the core of our city. And so what our goal is now is to bring that wealth back to our neighborhoods. Let's bring that wealth back to our communities. How do we ensure that we are making investments in a way in our neighborhood that it draws people back? Black, white, whatever, Hispanic, whatever your race is, we want you to see Whitehaven as a place to live and invest. We want you to see Smoky City as a place to live and invest. And so there are things that we can do from a city perspective where we're investing in the cores of these communities in a way that it attracts people and attracts businesses and attracts jobs, and it brings opportunity to the folks that have been there. I always say I want people that have been in these neighborhoods during the down years to be there during the up years. And so we have to figure out how do we invest without displacement.
Yes, put a special flashlight on South Memphis for me, because when I go and work with the students at my alma mater, Lemoyne College, that neighborhood looks the same.
It does,
the outer perimeter of it. You may see stacks right there. You see the beautiful lawns at Lemoyne, but out around it, the perimeter, it still just reeks of poverty.
It does. And in order for it to look different, we have to invest in a different way. We have to find resources for those neighborhood scale developers who can do one or two properties at a time. I'm on the board of Lemoyne, and so I'm in that community very often. And when I was housing director, we worked on a plan to expand broadband in that area and use that as a catalyst to get more businesses to go along Macklemore. But it's all going to come down to resources. It's all going to come down to resources and the ability to execute. And unfortunately, we're at a really tough time right now in our economy. It makes it difficult for developers, particularly those developers that don't have a long track record of developing. And so we have to be creative during this time period so that our neighborhoods don't get stuck.
Very creative.
Yeah, very creative.
Because, with the stock market and I don't want to say the crash of crypto, and it's a lot of stuff going on.
There's the war in Ukraine. There's just so much stuff, and trying to tamper inflation, so they're, increasing the interest rates. All of those things have a neighborhood scale impact. And, if you've been living in the neighborhood, all you want to know is why won't this happen?
Right.
And so as mayor, my goal is to not get caught up in all of those macro issues. Let's just find a way to execute on the ground.
Are you going to have like an open door policy?
What does that mean?
Like if a resident wants to come and talk to you,
I mean,
you're fully available to the public.
We're going to be fully available. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to manage that. We're going to have to manage that. I mean, you can't just walk up and
we're going to have Ricky Bobby
stop
from
what you're doing.
Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just hard to manage if you don't have some controls on it. But yeah, my goal is always to make sure that I'm open and accessible to the public. I'm never afraid of any conversation, any confrontational.
You've always been
dialogue.
very personable.
Like, it is what it. People just want to be heard, and they want you to solve their problems.
Yeah,
folks are tired of not getting results. They want to see results. And I always say, people don't get mad at you for the decision you make. They get mad because they don't understand how you're making the decision. Explain it. Talk about the why. Did you hear what I said as a community leader? Like, my goal is to make sure you know I heard you. I took this into consideration. I still made a different decision, but I want you to know I heard you. And if you can explain that articulately to people, then they will accept. They may not like it, but they respect it because you look them in the eyes and tell them how you made that decision. Has
anything stressed you out since you've put your hat in?
Oh man,
anything in particular?
I mean, it's just. I would say the stress is just trying to be on point at all times and just making sure that I'm covering the bases and touching as many people as possible. Sometimes, in this space, you have people that say, well, you should have called me. You should have called me. And it's like, well, I'm trying to call everybody. And so, just organizing communication. But all of those things are starting to fall into place the more I get into the rhythm of the campaign.
Yes. And as you mentioned, it's still very early on.
Very, very early. We have until, I think, July 20th.
July 20th.
For people to file. So
July 20th.
It'll be a long road.
Most recently, we've had a new contender jump in the race, J.W. Gibson II. Along with him, there's Sheriff Floyd Bonner Jr., Judge Joe Brown, State Rep Karen Kemper, Michelle McKissick, and Van Turner. What would you say to the Memphians out here about how you stand out as the black candidate? Because as you can see, it's getting very crowded and they still have until July. How do you stand out in this crowded field?
I would say results. Ask all of us the tough questions. Ask us the how. We're going to all give you a broad vision of where we want to take this community and what we want to see happen. Dig into our how. And then also ask us, what in your background, what results have you shown? Like, what have you done in your existing jobs? What have you done in your previous jobs? Show us the results that demonstrate that you're going to be able to do anything that you've told us you're going to do for us as a city. Ask me those questions. Ask them those questions. And I put my credentials up against any of them.
I would, too.
I mean, I do. I put my credentials up against any of them. They're all good people. I know them all. And some of them are serving in existing positions. Some of them have served in the past. And they'll continue to be good public servants for our community regardless of what shakes out on the race. But my goal is to stay laser focused on not on them, but on the people.
Okay. Well, Paul Young, repeat after me.
All right.
And I need you to say it with your gut. Okay?
All right.
Hey, man. Say, man.
Hey, man. Say, man.
Say it one more time, Paul Young.
Hey, man. Say, man.
Hey, man. Say, man.
I mean, that's natural for me because I talk like that in my off time.
Look, this is a moment of transparency between you and I.
All right.
Often in politics, when we dealing with money and decisions, there are gatekeepers.
Right.
Memphis is known to have people here with a lot of old money that call the shots. When new people step in, they may pull you on your coattail like, look, this is what we gonna do.
Right.
How do you plan to combat the gatekeepers in Memphis? Because they're not going away.
No, I mean, I work with who would be the quote unquote gatekeepers. In the past, I've worked with them. So I know who we're referring to when we say those names. But my goal is to make sure that every decision I make is people first. People first. If it's good for the people of the city, then we'll do it. And even on the fundraising side, what I make sure people know is that when they invest in the Paul Young campaign, what they're investing in is good governance. What they're investing in is the future of our city. It's not an investment in whatever decision you want. Nobody gets that. Nobody gets that. I mean, sometimes it may be the decision that you want. Sometimes I'm going to make the decision you might not have made. And that's for anybody.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I can make every decision that aligns with every person in Memphis. Consensus, you never get unanimous consent. But if you have a basis for your decision making and you stick to it and you're consistent, then people respect it. And so my position is people first.
People first. People first. Gotcha. Because, like I said, when it comes to the gatekeepers, often people have to make some adjustments to play the game.
Yeah, I understand. I had a good conversation with one of my mentors. I mentioned him earlier, Archie Willis, and one of the things he told me was, Paul, if you run, I want to make sure that you're willing to make the decisions, even if it means you would have to be a one-term mayor. You need to make the decisions that are going to push Memphis further.
I like that. That's sacrifice right there.
Who's going to actually elevate the game for African Americans in our city? We've had African American mayors before. Has the game truly changed?
No.
Has the business sector, black businesses in our community, have they truly been able to really get over the hump? That's what he was saying to me. And my goal is, what I told him is, yes, I'm willing to make the decisions that are going to advance people in this community. And because I'm supporting black businesses doesn't mean that we don't support white businesses. In fact, what I believe is that when we elevate 65% of the population, then the other 30% coming with us.
We all win.
So everybody wins. And so those are the types of decisions that I'm poised and ready to make.
Do you feel that you're the front runner right now?
I do.
All right.
I do.
All right.
I mean, stats will say that, somebody with a greater name recognition is, the most likely candidate to win. But let's talk. I feel like if you line us up and you ask us 10 questions with no script, it's going to be unquestionable who's the best candidate to lead Memphis.
Okay. This is what I want to know from you, Paul. Because we all know that the Gen Zers out there, Gen Zers, millennials, they're not too inclined to vote. How are you going to change that? How can you appeal to that demo?
They have to believe in you. That generation is not one that's just going to take you at face value. No. They want to see it. One of them texted me, they were helping on the campaign, and I didn't take a picture or something, and they sent me a quote that said, if there's no picture, did it really happen?
And they mean it.
And she meant it. I was like, man, y'all own me. But that's the way they think. There's like, you got to show it. Show us. That's the generation that they are. You got to show them, and I'm going to show them. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to make sure I'm listening to them, that I'm hearing them, and my goal is for them to be excited. I don't want them to vote for me just because we'll settle for this guy. I want them to feel like, all right, we got our guy. We got the person that really has the ability to lead us higher than we've ever been. And my goal is to earn their vote. I'm going to earn everybody's vote. That's my goal. The older generation, they're the ones that consistently vote. I got to earn their vote.
You got to.
With the Gen Z and millennials, those could be new voters to add to the pool. In Memphis, we've averaged around 100,000 votes every city mayor's election. And so if you can add people to that 100,000, then you're increasing your odds of winning. And so that's my goal. Okay,
so we're end of December right now. You mentioned that the race will heat up top of the year. How will that change your campaign? What will you do differently?
I think we'll start knocking on doors in the spring, so you'll see me in neighborhoods. You'll continue to see. I think we've been very present on social media, and we're going to continue that. I think you'll start to see ads and things of that nature at some point. But my goal is to stay focused on my message, what I need to do to make sure that I get the word out to people. I want to make sure that we're touching as many Memphians as possible, because I have the confidence and the belief that once I can get in front of them, once I can get an opportunity for them to hear my message, that we have a new voter.
All right. Well, Paul Young, if I could vote for you, I would, but I live in DeSoto County.
It's all right. It's all right. You're in the region. We got to play well with all of our regional partners.
We
too.
We do. But, I put Memphis on my back, and I have guests here that represent Memphis to the fullest, and I can say that you do, and you do it very well.
Thank you.
And like you mentioned, your background, everything that you've been involved in, I really feel like it's coming to a head with this particular role.
Yeah.
And
that's what I tell people. I actually say that. I say, I've been training my whole life for this
You really
job.
have. Like
everything that I've done has lined me up for this role. And so now we just have a long interview process.
Yeah, we do.
All of those folks, they're cool. We're just applying for the same job.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I stay focused. We're going to get it. We're going to get it.
We're going to get it.
We're going to get it. I feel very confident.
Is there anything you want to say to the Verbally Effective audience?
Well, I'd love to have your vote. Follow us on all of the social media platforms. You can hear and see more. It's Young for Memphis. You can go to the website, youngformemphis.com, sign up to volunteer. We're going to be knocking on doors. I need your help. And tell people about us. Subscribe to the Verbally Effective podcast,
yes,
and send this link to your friends and colleagues that are interested in the mayor's race.
Well, Paul Young, you are indeed verbally effective for the part 2.
Part 2.
And I wish you nothing but the best on this race. Anything you need from me, I got you.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We'll be talking again prior to the vote in October.
Absolutely.
And I wish you the best. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have Paul Young in the building. He is running for mayor of Memphis. I think he's going to be our next Memphis mayor.
Yeah, speak it.
I really feel like that. That's what's in my gut right now. And make sure you follow all his socials and definitely tune into his campaign. He has a lot going on. A lot can change between now and October. So I need you to get on board with Paul Young.
Join the team early.
Join the team early. Hey guys, your Double E, Ina Esco, signing off right here on Verbally Effective. Before I go, please subscribe to the podcast, as Paul mentioned, on all streaming platforms and at Ina Esco YouTube channel as well. Thanks for tuning in, and Happy New Year.